What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe here, host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show, and Dr. Vibe, winner of the 2018 Innovation Award given by the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. I like to say always, you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. I'm the host of Epic Conversations, and this is the home of Epic Conversations. A little bit delayed today, but we got it right. And you know something, for those who are watching live or on the replay, it's worth the wait. I want to give a shout out to Leland Best. And also just give me a second because I'm just going to get the people on Periscope here, because the Periscope people can't be left out because they're always wanting to hear what's going on with Dr. Vibe. I have a new friend to the online Dr. Vibe family here. I had the pleasure of meeting her a few months ago, and we just began conversating, and we've become buddies. I think I hope I can refer to her as a buddy, as a friend. No, yeah, you know, we have our moments, right? It's her wonderful, wonderful face you see there. But I'm going to tell you a little bit about her. Her name is Nova Browning Rutherford. She lectures on the importance of mental health, social and emotional intelligence in the academic, public, and private sectors from coast to coast in Canada, because we're both Torontonians. Fans of the internationally syndicated talk show The Social on CTV will recognize Nova as their trusted life coach and wellness expert for the last 3 seasons. Her career focus is personal development in the areas of mindfulness, integration, understanding secular meditation, and prioritizing self-care. Prior to her wellness work, she worked behind the scenes in Hollywood entertainment, supporting the marketing and PR campaigns of superstar celebrities. Her roller coaster life experience has been profiled in outlets like the Huffington Post, the Globe and Mail, Chatelaine, CBC, CTV, and the Oprah Winfrey Network. Her mission is to shift the stigma surrounding mental health in Canada, and I'm speaking this around the world by facilitating organic face-to-face dialogue where people feel safe, heard, and be seen. So welcome to the Dr. Vibe Show for the first time, and definitely not the last time. Nova, how are you?
Wonderful. How are you? I'm happy to be here.
I am very, very happy to have you here. From the first time I had the pleasure of meeting with you, I said, got to get her on the Dr. Vibe Show some way, somehow. And Nova's schedule is out of bounds. So it's worth the wait to have her on. And anyone who's watching this live on the replay, you're going to get good stuff out of this. But I'm going to have her share a little bit about her background, a little bit more, and then we're going to get right into the conversation. So Nova, share a little bit more about yourself, where you grew up, etc.
Where I grew up, okay, we're going to go all the way back. Being racially ambiguous, it's often a question I'm asked as to what are you and where are you from, so we can get that part out of the way and the guessing games can cease. My mother's Scottish and Ukrainian, and my father is proudly 8th generation Black Canadian. So I'm one of the few resilient who survived. I'm an ancestor of those who survived the Underground Railroad. My ancestors walked, it's documented, they walked from New Orleans to St. Catharines, and on a 4-month journey in the winter. So my family immigrated to Canada on foot and arrived in 1830. So I'm Canadian, in short. I'm Canadian, and I feel that I have an interesting lens, with that being my background, not West Indian, not African, not African American, and yet a woman of color, and in Canada. So it's an interesting identity. I oftentimes feel like a racially ambiguous spy, but it allows me the opportunity to seek common denominators with people. And for myself, that thread was always music. And so that's how I began my journey into the obsession of music and hip hop specifically. My mom's from the Windsor, I was born in Chatham. My mom's from the Windsor area, both my parents. And so that gave me access to Detroit radio. And I just started my music obsession from then. And at 19, when I moved from London to Toronto, I started working at Canada's first urban station, Flow 93.5. I was one of the premier peeps in the building, and which was an incredible learning experience. From Flow, from commercial radio, I moved to major record labels, independent labels. I've worked as a tour manager, artist manager, DJ manager, babysitter, glorified babysitter. My career took me to Los Angeles, where I continued working, as you heard in the bio, with artists and celebrities. But it was when I was working with one newsworthy and notable celebrity who has had public mental health challenges, who will not be named. And it was when I was working up close and personal with him that I really decided, and it was affirmed, that I needed to do something more, because I cared more about that individual than the product that we were selling. And I always felt like, well, what could his wellness, how could that impact his art? And if his art, if it changed his art and the lyrics that he shared, how could that influence other young people, but primarily other young people of color who look up to him, and change that dialogue? So I shifted gears, kind of went from a weird way from music to wellness and mental health, but it kind of all makes sense. And since 2009, that's what I've been doing. So I started a blog just really about lessons learned from the music business, called But I Love Me More. And it just took off in a time where blogging just became popular. And I started doing guest blogs and guest appearances and radio appearances and webinars, and it just all started rolling. And in 2012, when I moved back to Toronto, I didn't want to work in entertainment the same way. I was immediately pregnant with twin girls. They affirmed my purpose just to do something more with my life. And so I just started being what it was that I felt that I needed. And for myself and a lot of people, 18 to 25 is a hard time. So I signed myself up, booked myself as an independent speaker, and started, auditioning on these lecture circuits, and toured across Canada, speaking to colleges, really just having an honest conversation about mental health, like in an honest, plain spoken, this is something everybody goes through. Here's my experience with depression, anxiety, PTSD. And since doing that, we've seen a real shift in how we speak about mental health, how that conversation is changing. And I'd like to feel that I was a really big part of that. In 2015 and 2016, consecutively, I won from the Canadian Organization of Campus Activities Best Lecture and Keynote across Canada about this mental health conversation. So anyone who's in the sound of my voice, the power of one sincere conversation, a real heart-to-heart dialogue with someone who holds space and gets you. And when you're in that seeking chapter of your life, it can make all the difference as to the trajectory of the rest of your life. And I'm just so grateful that I've been trusted to be that person for so many people. So now my students that were in university are now in the workspace. And so workplace wellness has been a big component of what it is that I talk about. And just the work continues. And now we can talk more openly about mental health. And I think the evidence-based data is there to prove that this is why it's working. The same people who rolled their eyes when I told them I was a life coach 10 years ago, it's the same attitude people had 40 years ago about the benefits of yoga and bottled water. So, the times are changing. We're in the 21st century. We need a new way of doing things. And I'm just glad this conversation is happening. Woo!
Wow.
Who's a professional speaker?
Well, a few things before we get to what you shared. First of all, Ontario Minister Michael Couteau is on via Periscope. And Michael, so good to see you. Hope you're doing fine. And he did say here, very important issue, access and coordination of programs is so important to youth. And then on the Get Vocal, I had mentioned already, Leland Best from Michigan saying, did she say she babysat DJs? I could see that. So, yes, and
all of them. All of them. But, and jokes aside, I will say that my first clients were these young brothers in hip hop, these DJs and artists and producers and rappers. And because I was one of very few women in that space, and I just had to make sure I was being judged on merit. So my armor kind of became like a hoodie and Tim's. And I think that desexualizing myself from the head down gave these young men a freedom that they're like, okay, I don't have to think of her in this way. And now I can open up and share my doubt and fear and shame and grief in a way I can't with my brethren. I can't with my parents. And I heard more and more and more, I have no one to talk to about this, Nova. And I just felt like, wow, I underestimated that these young men even had these thoughts, let alone carry the weight of the stress. And so it was my way to empower women in an indirect way by supporting these brothers. I knew I was helping out a sister in the future. So all it was holding space, not to fix anybody, just to hold space and just for this young guy to hear himself and to begin a conversation. So yeah, everybody has stuff, but creatives and public facing people and creative public facing people of color hold a special type of emotional tax and emotional weight that can really, really wear down on you and affect your art. So all that to say, yes, babysitting DJs. Yes. Absolutely.
I also want to say shout out to Curtis Brooks and Moto J. And I think they're both based in Texas, and they both say a shout out. And Leland back in Michigan says, that's the way. So awesome. So the Nova fan club is growing, and it's very interesting. Right now on this live stream, it's only guys that are here, which is interesting. So this is good. It's a good thing.
This is the way. This is how I get you. I'm like, it's fine if you like to look at my face. Just hear the words coming out of my mouth. Okay.
Very, very good. And you already have a question, so I don't know if you want to answer it now.
That's fine. Let's go as it goes.
Yeah, so Curtis is asking, do you believe hurt people hurt people?
Yes.
Okay. I believe that. Do you want to go any,
misery, for the same reason misery loves company. For the same reason, like, you do what it is you know how to do. For the same reason you hurt those that are closest to you.
Exactly.
Yes.
Good stuff. Before we jump a little further, I have two more conversation pieces before we get into our main conversation. First of all, your parents are from two very different backgrounds. Mm-hmm. How has that come into your core in what you do, not only professionally, but as a mother, as a human being, as a wonderful lady?
Great question. What that means is that I can identify with what it means to feel othered. I can recognize someone who is aching to be seen. I can recognize someone who is putting on a mask or a front to be what it is that I think people will like. I intrinsically know what that feels like, to struggle with identity. And that's the common denominator. It's a struggle with identity. I was 10 years old the first time I saw someone that I felt looked like me. And it was Mariah Carey on an album cover. So, mixed races and, it's not a new phenomenon, but, to be in my shoes, to look at your family at a holiday table and not see someone who looks like you, to not resemble either of your parents, to have parents who are from a background that have often been at war. My mother's father disowned her when she married my father. They didn't speak for almost 20 years. So that's a lot to hold. That's a lot to hold, to exist in that space, to be born in that space. So as I've gotten older, I've been able to carve out my own identity, but I know how important it is. And I can spot someone who is trying to figure it out. And I can spot someone who's fronting from a mile away, and they know that I know. And I think that's why they open up. Excellent. So yeah, I just try and encourage, I really make a point of meeting people where they are instead of dragging them to where I feel that they should be or to where I want them to be. As far as my understanding, I meet them where they're at, enjoy the view that they're taking, and we look to go, okay, so this is how you see it, and then move forward. Because that's what would have been helpful to me. But because nobody did it, I have to be it.
Nice. And the other thing is that even though I read it just as a line in your bio, I do want to find out, you never told me, I think, and I want the audience to know how you got on the social, and maybe a little background on what the social is and how you got on there.
Really randomly. So the social is, nationally syndicated daytime talk show. It's the number one daytime program on CTV, which is Canada's number one network. And so I guess you could liken it to like a panel daytime program like The View or The Talk or The Real, that type of thing. So it's like 4 hosts and a co-host and just topics, lifestyle discussions, etc. And in 2015 is when I joined the show. So I moved in 2015, earlier that year, I moved to a new neighborhood, became close friends with my neighbor. She just started sharing. I told her what I do and who I am. And she's like, you need to be on television. She goes, I know somebody. she's in the book club with the senior producer for The Social. And she was like, I just want to introduce you on email, and that's fine. But I did a phone interview and I did a screen test and I did all the things and they had me in. And that was in August of 2015. So I think, and the benefit of being, and so The Social, it's a live daytime show. So it's filmed live in front of a studio audience of about 100 people, and it's aired everywhere and repeat segments. So it's been an incredible opportunity. But I think the reason why it's worked well and why I've succeeded on the show is the training I had prior in entertainment. So working in entertainment, working in hip hop, being all behind the scenes, like marketing and PR is what I did for other people. So I know what it is to stand behind the camera and do talking points and review notes and coach someone before they're about to speak. The studio where the program is taped at 299 Queen Street, it's a historic television studio in Toronto. I've been there many, many times. So it's always comfortable, always familiar. Being talent was new for me, but the job wasn't. So I took the pressure down and I just tell myself every single time, like, this is just a conversation. I'm talking to the 4 people on the couch, not the millions watching at home. And then when I look at the audience, I get all the notes together in my mind. And 30 seconds before I go on, I'm like, I either know it or I don't. I sit down, I look at the audience, and I just think, who needs this today? And I speak right to them. And that's it. So I'm happy to be coming into season 7 this year.
Wow. Congratulations.
Yeah, thanks.
What has been, just one more thing. What has being on The Social taught you? Has it shown you qualities you didn't know you had, or anything that sort of exposed you to things that I didn't know this about Nova?
What it is that what I'm reminded is that life happens for you and not to you. And it's really all training. Like, I may not understand, in like Karate Kid and Mr. Miyagi's having him do the things. You're like, what am I doing this for? This is so ridiculous. And now in the span of time, I'm like, oh, got it. So now I understand why my career in entertainment went the way it was, why I was in hip hop versus another genre, why I was in the environments that I was in, why I suffered and what I had suffered in my own life. And all of that was training and learning experiences, all of it, my personal life, my professional life, to be paired and packaged to kind of blurt out into this more public facing persona or just position, but it all makes sense. So when I could see how it all lined up, I didn't have to question it or doubt it or feel imposter. It just made sense. I was just like, oh, well, this is obviously what I'm supposed to be doing. And that took a lot of pressure off of myself.
Nice. Let's get into it. So the conversation topic today is understanding the difference between family and chosen family. Why did you want to bring this to the platform today?
Because it's the holidays and people don't like their families. And people don't want to talk about that they don't like their families. And people don't want to talk about that Christmas, even if they like their families today, there was times that the holidays were very triggering or upsetting, or it's in the new families that have changed in their own marriage and situations. It's just a troubling time for a lot of people, and family is the root of that. So I feel that we can talk about it. So a chosen family, if the family you came from sucked, you can make up a new one.
Okay. And before we went live, I was sharing with Nova this morning. I was meeting with a very close friend of mine, and he does not get along with his in-laws, especially his wife's father, to the point where he said, I don't want anything to do with him. I don't want to be around him for the holiday season. I'm going, I guess this is my preparation for this conversation. And Leland Best is saying, wife and I are proof of that, of what you're talking about.
It can be very difficult. And it's even as partners, and you get close to someone and you could know about, abuses or trauma that happened at the hands of the people you're going to be passing the potatoes to, it can be very uncomfortable. There might be times of year where you can kind of, birthday party or sort of pass and be civil and hello, but Christmas sort of demands like an extension of time and effort. There's just more time spent, and it's like close quarters, like you're staying at these people's houses or they're staying at yours. And so it's a different kind of emotion. It can be very upsetting. And so I just want to encourage people that yes, chosen families exist and that they're important, and it's important to try and work things out with your family. Yes, but it's not a must. You don't have to.
Okay. I'm going to just extend out here, Leland and Jay, if you want to jump in on the Get Vocal platform, please feel free. Nova would love to hear your takes if you have any. You know how the Dr. Vibe show rolls with epic conversations. I don't know if you did define it, but if you can just repeat for us again, what is the definition in your mind and your heart of a chosen family?
I feel like it's a group of people that you're emotionally close to and not necessarily biologically related to. So my family are the people I don't get to choose. The chosen family are the people I get to choose. So let's say the term chosen family is often used in the LGBT plus community because for a lot of our gay brothers and sisters, they're ousted or disowned, and so they have a chosen family. Or sometimes people immigrate to new countries, have a chosen family. They start new lives after university, or they're relocating cities. And these are the people that you form relationships with and bond, and you emotionally agree to support one another. So if you've managed to separate from a family that's unsupportive or even toxic, you still have the ability to form friendships who are psychologically healthier, emotionally healthier, and those people will accept you for who you are now, not their expectations of who you're supposed to be or how this was supposed to go. So you get to show up as is to them, and you get to decide who comes close. So that's a very important delineation I just wanted to talk about.
With the clients and the people you share about this subject, when do you see them needing a chosen family?
When they go against mom and dad's wishes. Oftentimes, because I lecture a lot at universities, and so I speak to international students, overwhelmingly. And what I'll hear in their private conversations after a keynote will be that they studied so hard just to get out of the house, just to move out of that town or out of that country, to finally be away and to be free, and just out of, father or brother's clutches or mother's expectations and demands or the sibling obligations and tension. And they just needed to get out. And now they're on their own and sort of standing on their own 2 feet, and they still need the support, and they still want to support others. And so that's when they start pulling their own people in. So I feel that you start to have your own chosen family when you've stand on your own 2 feet. And circling back to identity, when you understand who you are and who you are not, and that family no longer has like that hold on you. They are no longer the boss of you. You're not under the roof, like my roof, my rules. It's your roof and your rules. And that can be a difficult transition. It doesn't have to be painful or combative, because again, it's an emotional connection and support. It doesn't mean you disown or stop speaking to anybody, but it's who I show up for, who I call in the middle of the night, whose phone I answer in the middle of the night. And it may not be the people you're biologically related to.
Good stuff. Jay Garrett is saying being present with others is critical. And he says not living into expectations. And Jay has 2 wonderful sons. So I hope Jay wants to step in and talk, to give his experiences on this, because he would be a really good example of this kind of subject between family. Leland Best is coming in. This is good stuff. We'll wait for him to jump in.
Dr. Vibe, a pleasure to be here as always.
My pleasure to finally have you on one of my epic conversations. I've been waiting for such a long time, but thanks for taking the time, and feel free. What do you have to share in regard to this conversation?
Sure. Let me just make sure that I'm not doubling back on my audio here. And a pleasure to meet you as well, Nova. Thanks for having me squeeze in here and talk for a minute. The fact of the matter is my wife and I have suffered this kind of disconnect from family on both sides, actually, since we've been married. And it wasn't just that started it. We've both dealt with, whether it was from previous marriage engagements, whatever it might have been, family issues, whether it's alcoholism, drugs, or just jealousy in the family, things of that nature that cause tensions. And of course, when you come to the holidays, it all amplifies that enormously. But what we run into is, yeah, you're absolutely right. You have to somewhere draw the line of your own boundary, because if you can't maintain your own boundary, then you're just letting people walk on you. And we discovered that was taking place a lot in our family, especially when there were many abusive members in our families as well. That had to be segregated. I mean, it just comes to that point where, like you said, when a relationship becomes toxic, even if it's your own parents, there's a statement that's always quoted, you know, you have to respect your parents and you have to forgive and all this type of stuff. But a parent has to earn respect as well as, you know, anyone else in the world. If you're going to be a parent, you have to show that respect to your children. And also as a friend, I think a friend will also show true respect for an individual. So given exemplary behavior, yeah, it makes good family. But when you have people tearing you down, that's not good family.
People, and it's such a good point. And I also have a family. So what I've learned, like with my own self, is one thing that really helped was to take, and when it came to separating those expectations, I took away the title. I took away the title of mom and dad, and I looked at Terry and Diane. And I looked at them objectively as to how they were raised, how they saw themselves, who raised them, what was happening the time they were born, the era that they were born in. I just looked at them as individuals. And then I was like, okay, like, you know, how could you be what you didn't see growing up as a father? How could you, you know, learn how to express if that wasn't modeled to you as a mother, for example? And I just stopped judging based on how I thought it should look, based on models I saw really on television or with friends. And I stopped comparing the idea, not my parents, but the idea of what that should look like versus other people who had life experiences very different from them. So it didn't take away what it was that happened, and it didn't make anything okay. And I was late in my teens. I just started to really understand as to how things shaped out the way that they did. And it wasn't my fault. Children were often, you know, self-blame and think that it was all that they're doing. And I could just take a step back and be like, okay, so this is how it is. This is why it is. And let me love what's lovable. I try not to judge the rest. I create the boundaries when and where I need them clearly and for myself. And I just move on with my life. So it's not easy to do as a child. But when you get to be an adult, there comes a point where you have to take responsibility for your own life. And it can't just be mom and dad's fault anymore. And so and part of that responsibility is distancing yourself from them for your own mental health and well-being, because you understand as to how things got the way to there, then you're absolutely allowed to do that no matter what mom says. So that's where I come in. I try and give people the permission and the reminder, because not only does it keep you stuck, it keeps them stuck. Because it keeps them enabling that same behavior and those same patterns, because the punching bag is there. You take the punching bag and then they're just going to get tired of hitting in the wind, or they will see that they just punch whoever's close to them, or they won't. But you won't have to suffer anymore.
It could change, but it's not necessarily always the case. And that's where we always run into issues. It's that whole premise that those changed, you know, those that you force your opinion on are only gonna, what's the saying that used to go along with that? Those forced to change their opinion are of the same opinion still. So it's something you can't push on someone. But if you need someone to change in your life, you can separate yourself from them and instigate that change, because they're going to realize, look, if they want to have you as a friend, then you have to respect their boundaries, and they're going to have to step up to the plate and say, okay, I see your boundaries now, so I will change just for the sake of our friendship. Mm-hmm. But it doesn't always work that way. And that's where you really find out who your friends are.
And your family.
Mm-hmm. Well, I agree. Well, thanks a bunch. I'll let you guys go. Doc, go ahead.
Leland, thank you so much. And don't be a stranger. I'm hunting you down, brother.
Yeah, come by anytime and catch us over at Wake Up West Coast too, Dr. Vibe. And I'd like to even get a hold of Nova sometime and have her on my show someday. So I'll be in touch.
If she's okay, I'll share her contact information with you, and you can arrange that if that's fair.
Sounds great. All right, guys, have a good show. It's been great so far. We'll be sitting here watching.
Thanks,
Thank
Leland.
you so much. Much appreciated. Good stuff, Leland. Actually, Leland was the gentleman who told me about Get Vocal, so I'm totally transparent, and I thank him so much for sharing. And he is Not only great at the technical end, he's just a good person, bottom line. So it's fantastic. I want you, as we go through here, to talk about the importance of social connection in the modern age, because I think this is a very important part of this conversation. So could you share that with us?
Sure. And so when we're talking about family and those connections and choosing family and the importance of that, we're just in a new time. But for generations, our families and extended families lived in the same, under the same roof or in the same village or very close proximity in the same community. But those just aren't there anymore. It's a sign of the times. It's the changes in the workplace and our work schedules. It's suburban life. It's condo living. We know fewer neighbors. We join fewer clubs. We spend less time with our extended family. We entertain less outside of the home. And so therefore we spread further and further apart until we're forced together at Christmas time. And we have to pretend that we've been engaged all of this time. And that's really difficult. And I feel too many of us are really trying to take care of everyone we know in our lives, but really who takes care of you? Who checks in on you? And the expectation might be is that you show up for your family and friends, but if that's not being reciprocated, then that doesn't seem very exciting to do any longer. So that social connection is really, the studies show it's our number one driver of happiness. And that social connection is as primal to us as our need for bread and water. And a lack of social connection is on par with smoking and obesity as far as stress on our physical health and our physical emotional health. Think of how, when you have a diagnosis or you lost a job or you and your spouse are separating or your child is ill. If you had no one to call, how much more stressful is that time for you to, even if you had people, to feel that you're alone, the subjective feeling of loneliness. And that social connection, the studies are there. Those who have that support system, be it widows or cancer survivors, do far, far better when they have like a mentor or accountability partner or just someone checking in on them, fueling them. No strings attached, no tit for tat. No obligation, just there with that sincerity. And it's a sign of the times that we're drifting apart. But I feel in that time apart, we can say like, is this hard for you? Yeah, this is hard for me too. And we're kind of finding our way back to each other again. We've gone too far as a society from in this 21st century living. We've gone too far from what sustained us as humans and as humanity for thousands and thousands and thousands of years, that closeness and that heart-to-heart dialogue and hearing someone's voice and looking in their eyes and just holding space and being present with someone. It feels like nothing, but when you don't have it, you realize that that's the good stuff that life is made of. And in this digital age, I feel that we're reprioritizing that importance, and we're just finding our way back to each other for this modern time. So you see it with online webinars, you see it with FaceTime and voice notes and meetup groups and even coffee shops, just so people don't feel alone. Shared workspaces, all of these things are helping bring people back together to community. And we're finding a way to make it work for us for where we are in the 21st century. We don't have to throw the phones away or this modern life away, but we've got to find a middle ground that works for us, because too far, it hasn't been working.
Yeah, and based on that, one of the things I always hear is that like the younger generation are the challenged ones when it comes to social connections. But do you think also people who are older are also having that challenge, maybe because of different reasons, of that social connection void?
Yes, I feel that there used to be bowling clubs and Tupperware clubs and tea parties and things that were like a regular foundation of my life. Every Wednesday night I do this. Every Sunday I have church. I had like a regular routine in addition to my family, but outside of my family, where I could decompress, where I could support another person. And if we don't allow ourselves space for that, or if that's how we were raised and now that is lacking just because of the changing times, yeah, that would feel very, very jarring. And especially culturally, I see this a lot with international students, perhaps who come from the West Indies or from Southeast Asia, India, where communities are tight-knit and close, and then they're away, and they're in a dorm, or they're on a campus with 50,000 people, and no one speaks their language, no one eats my food, no one gets my references, and that can feel very lonely and isolating. So loneliness is something you'll hear more and more about in the mental health conversation in 2019, and you see it in younger people in the university age when they're kind of on their own for the first time, but you see it in the aged as well, because baby boomers, it's that aging generation, and their children are busy working and busy with, just busy, like on hyper drive. So not everyone has the time to go visit grandma every Sunday. People just don't do that anymore.
Leland and Jay have some good comments here I'll share with you. Leland's saying that that's one of the major downfalls of social media. It has created a lazy society.
Mm-hmm. It's feeling connected without connecting. Feel engaged without participating. I can be a voyeur in your life. I know what your kids wore for the Christmas concert. I know when you got a haircut. I've noticed when you're online or offline, but I haven't heard your voice in a year and a half because we've just been on the screen of Twitter. And on the flip side, it feels like I'm enough because I've got the likes, I've got the followers. I feel like I'm in touch, but I'm not. There's that gap missing. And I know for myself, like I've got lots of like my virtual friends and virtual followers, people I've never met in person, but who I feel connected to and engage with because I see their lives often. And so when I finally meet them, it doesn't feel like the first time that I'm hugging them because we've shared a virtual connection, and that's real. Then that connection is real. But it's really nice when it can be followed up with even just something as simple as a voice connection. Can really go a long way. So I feel like we're finding it, but those who just voyeur and scroll and lurk, the people who don't have any posts, but they just watch everybody else.
Yeah.
I see you. I know what you're doing and I see you. And I don't like it and I don't like it. So it's laziness. It's laziness. It's fear. It's a lack of vulnerability. And that person is the one who ultimately suffers. But on the flip side, it's those who share everything. Every meal, every selfie, every thought, every breakup, every hookup, everything. So I feel that there's a middle ground in social media. But social media is new. It's new to us as a society in the span of humanity. Social media is very, very new. So we're figuring it out.
Jay is saying the thing I like about this platform is I can participate, listen to a conversation I might not normally run into in my real estate life. So Leland's saying, me and the wife met online. We were married 4 months later.
I feel that those virtual connections are real. I don't think that they're false at all. And for that reason, Jay, because you're, and I feel that that's a big part of the stigma, why mental health, the stigma is changing, because now on social media, there's like that safety and anonymity that I can go on a chat room about mental health or miscarriage or abuse or things that you just don't talk about. But now there's a forum of other people who can speak about it and share their experiences, share their tips and guidance, or that you can just vent. And that's very, very helpful. And the connections that happen in those forums, I'm thinking for myself, there's a fantastic group called the Black Moms Connection. And it's just wonderful. People who are stressed in transitions. Sometimes when you're the person who has to hold it all together, I need a place to fall apart. And sometimes that can happen at the safety of my keyboard. And that's valid. I feel that it's very, very valid. So I don't like hearing that, the attitudes of like that it's not real and those connections can't happen, because I really think that they can, but there's a harmony that needs to exist. So for all the time and all the friends you have online, like I need you also to go offline and spend time and show up to the people who are really in your life.
It's interesting you're saying that, and I am blessed because I live in the same city as Nova. So we once in a while we get the pleasure of seeing each other, but we do chat decently on the phone. And a perfect example, I had a challenging father yesterday. Won't get too much into the story, and I said, you know what, I gotta call somebody and just say, you know what, did I do right? I eventually had to walk away from him, and Nova gave me some great perspective in regards to the situation. Oh, Jay has a question. What is your recommendation on how to discuss the concept of mental health with people in a day-to-day conversation. Jay, you may want to
How
come on and explain a little bit more on that one.
how to bring up mental health in a day-to-day conversation?
Yeah, and if you could jump on, here we go. Jay's gonna come in. I love it. Thanks, Jay.
Hey, Dr. Bob, thanks for having me. Hey, Nova, nice
So
to meet
good
you.
to see you, man. So good to
Hi
see
there.
the boys doing okay.
Doing great, doing great. Just
Excellent.
just finished the first semester of freshman year and first semester of his senior year.
Nice.
Oh, congratulations.
2 boys, so I'm an empty nester. I'm getting used to it.
That's a big deal. Congratulations. You made it, Dad.
Yeah, absolutely. So, no, the question I have comes out of the idea that when we see somebody who's physically out of shape, it's very easy. You can tell when somebody maybe not has heart disease, but when somebody is unhealthy physically, there are visible signs that come with that.
There can be.
And, if somebody's obese or, unhealthy, then there's also, we kind of know what to say, how to address those signs, how to correct it, intake, exercise, nutrition, all that matters. But how do you then have kind of a similar approach to have a discussion on mental health? Because somebody's mental unhealthiness is not as obvious to everybody. It may be to some, but how do we shift more people to thinking about mental health and mental unhealthiness and the necessity of, I would say not treating, but treating, I guess.
Mm-hmm. Of acknowledging.
Acknowledging it. Yeah, addressing it.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And a really great question. Well, I think the first thing is to have that correlation between health, physical and mental, and they're both a priority. So the same way you wouldn't judge someone for suffering with a broken arm or being unable to work with a broken ankle, or you wouldn't say like, come on, get over it if they had stage 4 cancer. For the same reasons that you may not be able to identify what anxiety looks like, or social anxiety, or postpartum, and on and on and on. And oftentimes, because of the stigma, someone has gotten very good at putting that mask on and fronting and being, no, I'm fine, totally great. No, all good here. Look away, watch the waving hand, nothing to see here. And so then for our own comfort, it's like, no, they're fine. No, they've got it. And I hear that a lot when it comes to people's aging parents and early onset dementia, which is not necessarily mental health, but it's mental health. And so it's like, oh, it's older, and dismissing some behaviors and activities, or assuming that mental health has to look this way, like it has to look really bad for it to be depression. It has to look really bad before I can identify it as anxiety or PTSD or a host of other things. And it's not always so obvious. So I think the big thing is having that face-to-face time. It brings me back to social connection, because, someone can like kind of brush it off on a phone call or in that brief, engagement at a holiday party or birthday function. It's like, okay, no, they look good, but it's in those consistent face-to-face visits and that showing, and you can sense where someone is at. You can start noticing their physical environment. Go to their home, right? See how they're living. Eat a meal with them. See how they're eating. Go out with them. See how, when they're having a bad day, instead of talking to them on the phone, go show up with them. And if they reach for 6, 7, 8 drinks or food or women or credit cards or whatever, like, note that, not to judge that. And perhaps sometimes those icebreaker questions are often as simple as, how are you? But how are you really? How are you really doing? And give examples, not from a place of judgment, but like, I've noticed these things. I'm concerned about these behaviors. Or I've heard you say these things about yourself, about the situation, and give concrete examples of what you've heard them say, how they speak about themselves or others. Perhaps they're not speaking highly of themselves, or I hate this, or I used to do this, or just being really mindful of that language. And I think it's an opportunity to show strength and vulnerability. So if you, for example, let's say like the best way to encourage somebody to work out is to start working out, right? And they maybe get encouraged by your behavior. Or if they see you start eating salad every day, they might be like, okay, maybe I could just start adopting these same habits. So it could be an opportunity for you to talk about your past struggles or something that you're working through, and in just an organic, plain spoken way, because the more we do that, the more the stigma is gone. Your health, your mental health is a part of living. You live long enough, you will have scars and broken bones. You live long enough, you're going to ruminate about the past, worry about the future, and have your world rocked by something you didn't see coming. That's depression, that's anxiety, and that's PTSD. And that's just part of being alive. So we normalize it and say, yeah, I know I get stressed about these things, just even stressed about the holidays. And yes, it's stress, but I hate the crowds in malls, or I get really nervous when I'm forced to go to a work party and make small talk. Just saying those things can start a dialogue that somebody else can have. And it's not about fixing anyone. It's just holding space for them. It's showing up and asking questions, and then just holding space to listen. That's really the best thing that you can do for somebody. They already know the problem. They already know what they probably need to do. Hold space and listen to them consistently. And in time, perhaps the things will come out, or they'll deal with it on their own time. But your role is to show up and shut up.
I like that very much. No, I like that a lot. In fact, your last statement just answered Leland's statement. His last statement says, my problem is I'm always trying to fix things. And what you said is just be there to show up and listen.
Yeah, no one is broken. It's not your job to fix anybody. No one is broken. They're just in this is where they're at right now. This isn't a pain contest either. This is not the pain Olympics. It's not, I hear this a lot. It's like, well, I'm going through all these things, but people have it worse. So what do I have to complain about? Or, well, at least it's not this, or that. I'm like, yeah, but if it's hard for you, then it's hard.
Yeah.
Pain is pain. Yeah. Difficult is difficult. Because I'm not a child soldier in South Sudan, my pain is now null and void. Like, no, that's not fair. And it's not, well, he and I had the same situation and look how great he's doing and I'm not doing great. I'm doing it wrong. No. You do it your way. He does it his way. I do it my way. And every single person is different. Look at our families. You can be raised under the same roof with the same parents and be very different people. We're all very, very different people. And that's valid. So when we judge ourselves and compare ourselves to an idea, to a screenshot of how we feel life is supposed to be, to the expectation attached to a title, it's just unfair. It's just more pressure on us. So as much as I don't want it, then I wouldn't want to put that on somebody else. So just another reason to just show up and listen actively, right? Really hear what they're saying, what they're not saying, how they're talking about themselves, look at their physical environment, notice their body language. But that can best be done by being physically present. And that's why we need social connection. That's why it's vital to us, because we can't see ourselves.
That's good stuff. Thanks, Nova.
Yeah, it is.
Thank
solid.
You.
Really, really good. Hey, greetings, Ellie. Thanks for stopping by. Leland, I know you had that question. Has it been answered? So I put it in the chat there. Jay, you have 2 young boys, and this is an interesting subject.
Young men now. Young men.
Yeah,
yes, true. Young men. I know you do whatever you can to make sure that they come to you first instead of chosen family. Have you had that challenge as of yet in any way?
No, not really.
I don't think so. What I know about you, the father, I think you love your sons. So I just wanted to see if that came out there, because I'd be surprised.
Well, one of the things that I think has been critical in my parenting approach with them is I feel like every day my job is to allow them to be a little bit more independent than the day before. So that when they choose to fly the roost, that they are then equipped to make the decisions as their individual, men that they are. So they come to me for some things, and oddly enough, I find great satisfaction when they go to their mom for the things that they think their mom is better suited for. We've been divorced 15 years, and their mom is not really a completely healthy individual, but she's still their mom. And there are things that they feel, closer to, connect with her on than certain items. And I don't take that personally, like it's an affront to me. I'm happy that they have areas that they can connect with their mother. Mm-hmm. So now that they're 18 and 22, we're transitioning our relationship from where I'm responsible for them to now we're beginning to be more and more like adult friends. Mm-hmm. And I've had that discussion with them several times. I was like, especially when they were in their upper teens, but still in high school, I was like, look, I'm not your friend. I mean, I love you. I care about you. I care about you more than I care about my friends. But the reality is I'm still your parent. And there's certain things that I'm responsible for. When you're on your own, then those responsibilities are going to be on you. And, you're going to rise and fall on your decisions. And it's not going to be on my head. So as far as them, choosing their friends and choosing their family, I think they're doing a good job from what I can tell. They definitely have given me feedback on some bad choices that they've made on their chosen, family, some guys that they thought would be in their group, and they've had to cut them out.
That's part of it.
And so it's fun watching that. And then of course I feel honored that they share that with me and kind of let me know that that's going on.
Mm-hmm. It's so fortunate to know, like, even if they don't share everything with you, to know that they can when they need to. That's the crucial part, because there will be adult figures, non-parental figures in their life, just as there always has been. There's coaches, there's teachers, there's your peers, parents. And sometimes people want those other perspectives and examples to model themselves after. But at the end of the day, they have to know that even if Dad doesn't agree with my choices, or I messed up and I might feel embarrassed, I can still tell him, and he's not going to throw me away. And that's the piece that everybody needs, like that sense of security, and because nobody can give that to you and nobody can take it away once you've got it. So good on you, Dad.
And if you can't get that, like you were saying earlier, if you can't get that in your birth family, then you need to go out and find your chosen family so that you can have that kind of support. Because we can't
having those relationships crumble is a part of that, is a part of reprioritizing. It's a part of being like, oh, okay, well, now I know I really need someone who's reliable and accountable and says they're going to do what they want to do. That's more important to me than I thought that it was. And that's what those people kind of come in and out of your life. And that's, and we've got to own our own mess and be accountable as to when we messed up and didn't show up to a friend in the same way and be like, I've got to do better at that. That's another benefit as to why those people can come in and out of our lives, because our family will usually always be there. So that's, I think, why people take them for granted. But that chosen family, you get to kind of work out the kinks and how you show up to these relationships. And this is the perfect time, because this is when it really matters. 18 to 25 window, boy. It's the time of nobody warns you about. You don't have the coping skills of the past. You don't have the reference points to know it's all going to pass, but how you handle the stress in that window is training for how you handle it, all the other stressors that come. So if you reach for the bottle every time at 19 and no one teaches you to do it different, then at 29, at 39, expect the same result. It's no fault. You don't know what you don't know, but this is that window. This is that window of training. So I'm glad they have a good example.
Oh, thank you. That's nice of you to say.
Jay, can you stay on just for another quick few moments? I got an interesting question I think both of us can tag team on, and I know Nova would like to hear on this. You're still doing a lot of work with men, correct?
Yes, sir.
So if you just off the top of your head, if you ask this question to the men you are or have dealing with, what do you think most of them would say?
Which question's that?
Is their relationship better with their family or their chosen family?
Yeah, I would say most of those guys would say their relationship's better with their chosen family. And my perception of that is that most of them are trying to beat a square peg into a round hole when it comes to their birth families, instead of letting go of the expectations and how unrealistic those expectations can be wherever they were set, and just meeting people where they are, which is kind of what I was saying earlier in the chat. Expectations ruin relationships, and they ruin relationships between spouses. They ruin relationships in families, and it could be the child's, the expectations that he thinks his parents have of him, whether they're realistic or not, and whether they're real. It could just be the perception of what that expectation is. And then when you have a breakdown in communication where, parents can't communicate or children can't communicate back, then the breakdown of those expectations are, they're catastrophic. When you were talking earlier about mixed race families, my first best friends in kindergarten, first and second grade, they called us the Three Amigos. And Vincent, his parents were both black, and Malcolm, his dad was black and his mom was white, and they both played basketball in college is how they met. And then both of my parents are white. And it was funny because the three of us were inseparable. We spent the night over at each other's houses, and it literally was, to us, the whole racial thing was a non-issue. That was Malcolm's mom. She was white. Malcolm's dad was black. It just, it was like, didn't even notice it really until other people started talking about it.
Right.
And that's part of how those expectations get set up. I mean, obviously, Nova, you shared that your experience, you look left and you look right at your Christmas table, your Thanksgiving table, and like, okay, well, wait a second. Nobody really looks exactly like me. And so your perspective is completely different. And so, I can see that would be, a different reality than, kind of how Malcolm was probably the same way. He's like, okay, wait a second. Vincent's a lot darker than me, and Jay's a lot lighter than me. And, and it was kind of a mathematical thing to us. Like, okay, well, Vincent's dark skinned because both of his parents are dark skinned. Jay's light skinned because both of his parents are light skinned. Well, I've got one dark skinned parent, one light skinned parent. So that means I'm going to be a mixture of the two.
Beige power.
Yeah. But it was just kind of a funny thing, because I say it's funny because it wasn't that big of a deal to us growing up, as far as our friends, how we chose our friends. And it's probably a good example of, like what you said, Nova, the difference between your chosen family and your family, your birth family. And because Malcolm and Vincent and I, we chose each other because we enjoyed hanging out together. But the expectations, I think, are the critical thing that, we get caught up in those expectations for whatever reason, that, we're trying to live life, trying to find a shortcut. There's strategies that we employ to try to make life easier to live. And sometimes they get derailed, and those expectations throw our relationships off. So, I just think that when it comes to, your chosen family and your birth family, most of the guys I deal with would definitely say that their chosen family, they may not use the word more intimacy, but they would definitely say they have more intimacy with those people.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll just quickly throw in for myself, it was chosen family for a period of time. And then I realized that the only people that were there for me when it really counted were my family. It was like, and I think especially in the world of getting disappointments in career and things like that. And when I noticed that, you know what, career isn't what it's all about. It's about my parents who've been with me through thick and thin. It made a turn for me. 10, 15 years ago, I would have said, yeah, my chosen family, my guys and all that, but they're not always there. But I've developed relationships with a number of them that if I call them, they'll come be there for me. But still, when it comes down to the core for me, it's especially my dad who cusses me out if I don't call him every other day. That's there. And of course, I have some family dynamics that are a bit like everyone does. But when it comes down to have those core people that watch my back and, they're there for me. And it's different for everybody. And again, you have your boundaries and your definitions. But I think because one of the things Nova wants to know more about is how can she help men? So I'm so happy that you came on and that you do a lot of work with men. I do a lot of work with men. That's why I asked that question for her to get a perspective when it comes to this subject in men.
It's not, but I think it's important to note, like, we don't have to be all things to everybody. And, some people will be there for some challenges and other people will be there for other challenges. And again, I think it can come back to those expectations. Like, let's say when it's really dire, let's say an illness, for example, there's certain people that you expect to come and see you at the hospital and to be there at your bedside. And yes, your biological family, you would think that they will be there. But sometimes it's not the case for a ton of reasons. What's important is no matter the dynamics, just strong or weak to your biological family, that may expand or contract to your needs in time, and that's fair. The importance is to have a chosen family, to have those social connections, and to be that for somebody else, because someone may need you and you didn't realize that what role you filled in their life. It may be a casual acquaintance to you, but we don't always know how much we mean to others. So I think it's just important. It's important to note that.
Well, I think that what you mentioned, Nova, earlier about your mom's father. I mean, if they didn't speak for 20 years,
yeah.
I mean, obviously there was a void in your mom's life that she had to find other people to fill that void.
That's right. Her in-laws. So my father's father became her, de facto father. Her stepfather became a de facto father because of that relationship. Now they repaired their healing when her grandmother passed, when her father's mother passed, and so now we're all at the funeral weeping for this woman. And so you're reminded very quickly, like, yes, of course, it's just ridiculous that I've let how much time has passed, and of course she loves my mother the same, and this is my daughter, and we have bonds that can never be broken. And that's what you mean, Dr. Vibe. And those moments when it really matters, when someone's over the hospital bed or over the casket, who is there and who is not there. And it might not, because someone is not there at that crucial moment, doesn't mean they can't be there at other crucial moments in your life.
Good stuff.
One of the things when you talk about those crucial moments, especially, over the casket, using that term, I have been working diligently with everybody I talk to really embrace their mortality and realize that they're not promised tomorrow. And that over the casket is almost a daily concept that you need to be aware of. Because we make decisions on a daily basis like we're going to live forever. And like, oh, we can put it off. I can do that next year.
The Buddha said, the trouble is you think you have time.
That's right.
No, time never lost a fight. That's what I tell people.
I like
time
that.
never lost a fight.
And there's a space between live like there's no tomorrow and then like live like you have all the time in the world and there's 10,000 tomorrows, and you know what, I'll make it next Christmas. Like we all know what can happen in 365 days.
No,
So it sometimes it's just getting past that that mental pressure. Let's go back to like the family table or these holiday kind of obligatory things that we feel like we have to show up for, and so many blocks can come up for to stop us from showing up or just being present in those conversations with the people who we know will be there year after year after year, and we can take that for granted. But it's getting to a place like we are not just doing things like because someone might die. I'm doing things because I actually want to be there. And if that person was gone, then at least I can live with myself knowing I said my piece. I showed up when they needed. I called when they came. I came when they called. And I was there in the ways that I could be, I showed up in the ways that I knew how, in the ways that were enough for me. And if you can, rest your head knowing that you did all you can and you were true to that relationship, then that will save you a lot of regret in the future, because the unthinkable can happen. And that regret, I don't wish that on anyone.
Yeah. I'd like to welcome Durham Skyrider. How things in North Carolina? Hope things are really good. We're going to start winding down the conversation. Durham, you're more than welcome to jump in before we wind down. Nova, I know before we close out, you wanted to give 3 tips in dealing with difficult families or difficult family members. So if you could share that with us.
I'm thinking to adult siblings and perhaps to the adult cousins, because there can be that generational gap between like a child and a parent, but you have siblings and cousins or in-laws and spouses, and you've got some neutral people in your group. So sometimes, find your allies, find your allies in your family. And sometimes it can be just creating the opportunity for dialogue to not have those difficult conversations, but just to create a bridge. So, for example, perhaps we carpool to the dinner together, or we share an activity such as cooking dinner or setting the table, or doing some decorating. And that might be an organic way just to let things naturally unfold as to how's it going, what's been happening, and so on and so forth. So 1, I'd say create the opportunities for dialogue. 2, find your allies in your family. 3, find ways to decompress afterwards. So sometimes it's I can take concrete action based on a hypothetical. So when you hear that what if, and what if this, and what if they do that, or I don't want them to do this, and I don't want them to do that, and I just don't want it to be, notice that. Notice the language that you're using, right? Mindfulness is essentially noticing your language, thoughts, and feelings, and physical behavior and physical environment. So notice the language. So when you hear yourself saying, what if, stop, take a beat, and realize what is. Affirm what is. Sometimes it's not that deep. It might not go as bad as you predict, because you can see it going terrible. And so then you don't show up, or you don't call, or you're just kind of braced the whole entire time. And it's more difficult than it needs to be. So affirm what is, keep the desired outcome in mind always. So when you hear yourself like, I don't want this to happen, I don't want that to happen, stop, notice it, and affirm, what do I want? How do I want this to go? How do I want to walk away from this holiday feeling? And how do I want other people to feel? I want to feel heard. I want everyone to have a good time. I want it to be easy. I want there to be no stress, just good memories for children and seniors, right? Because those are the people, that's really who we're making memories for. The adults, we've got our own stuff, and we can put that aside in our own time. But children who don't know any better, and the elderly who are running out of time, let's just make a point, like a shared agreement for this window of time, just to make these memories last with people. So if we can come to an unspoken agreement to prioritize them and leave our stuff to the side, that may be enough. And to have that agreement might come over making mashed potatoes or in the carpool. So I would say, again, create the opportunities for dialogue, find the allies in your family, prioritize the desired outcome that everyone can agree on, and find a way to decompress when it's all over.
That's fantastic. Well, I'd like to thank you for taking time out of your positive, productive schedule to share with us. And Jay's nodding his head, saying he enjoyed the conversation big time. Like to say, if people want to get in touch with you, how can they?
I am on all of the interweb at But I Love Me More. So Twitter, Facebook, Instagram at But I Love Me More. And my name is Nova Browning Rutherford, so you can find me on all of the things there. And NovaBrowningRutherford.com is the website, and I'm speaking all over the place. And you can find me again. I talk about mental health, focusing on mental wellness, the life after, and how to maintain and stay out of that place. Focusing on mindfulness, meditation, and prioritizing self-care. So if those are conversations that interest you, come to me. Let's talk about it. It's not that difficult. It's really, really not. It's very simple, but it's not easy. But there's a way that we can talk about it.
Excellent. And I've put Nova's Twitter handle in the comment section. Also, her LinkedIn profile link is also there. So if you click on either one of them, they will get there. I will share those also with Leland Best, who was here, who jumped off. Also, Jay, thank you so much. Patricia, thanks for jumping in. We had Michael Couteau jump in, and also at the perfect gift on Periscope says great advice. So great closing advice. So excellent conversation. I hope that she can find time in her journey, positive, productive schedule to come back and join us. That would be great stuff. I am Dr. Vibe, host of Epic Conversations at the Dr. Vibe Show, home of Epic Conversations. If you want to get a hold of me, the best place to go is the website, drvibeshow.com. You'll see all the different platforms I share my content on. I could go on for 2 minutes on that, but you're not here to listen to me, so I make it nice and quick. And also, I'm the 2018 Innovation Award winner from the Canadian Ethnic Media Association. I keep on wanting to say the Music Association because I was involved in the past in music also, but Media Association. 4 last things I'd like to say. Live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Next up, sometimes you have to get smaller to get stronger. Next up, block assumptions. And then finally, aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. Thank you so much for watching this live on the replay, and have an outstanding day, and have a peaceful holiday season. Mm-hmm. And if you have any questions on how to do that, go to Nova. Bye-bye, everybody.